Good evening. Welcome to The Next Word. I'm your host, Chris Warnke, and tonight we have a really special guest. We have Anthony Powell, Tony Powell, by his friends, who's a master of more artistic traits than you can shake a stick at, according to the Washington Post. He is truly a Renaissance man, and tonight we're going to have a conversation about his work as a photographer here in Washington, D.C., among his many other talents. Tony, all your talents: composer, choreographer, correct?
Visual artist.
Visual artist,
Yeah.
Premier photographer.
You say so.
You danced. You're in
danced.
film. So let's take it from the beginning. And you're in Maryland.
Yeah, I was born in Washington, but I was raised in Montgomery County. My family moved to Montgomery County when I was 9. And I was very fortunate to attend Chevy Chase Elementary School. Very fortunate.
Right down the street.
And a production came to Chevy Chase Elementary when I was in 6th grade that kind of did an outreach performance from Howard University. They came and danced, they sang, they acted. And at the end of this production that they presented to the whole school, they asked all the kids to kind of get up and dance around. And for some reason I must have been really into it that day and excited to be there and to see them. And after the assembly was over, they called me down to the office. Over the loudspeaker, they said, "Could Anthony Powell please come down to the office?" And I didn't know what was going on. And that led to an appearance, my first ever stage performance with a professional company. The first professional thing I ever did was Washington National Opera's La Coque d'Or at the Kennedy Center. I got to have a small part in that. And then shortly after that, I found myself traveling all across Europe, Switzerland, Germany, and Paris, in a production of the musical version of Raisin in the Sun, which had just left Broadway, called Raisin. And I took over the part that Ralph Carter, who ended up doing Good Times, as the son in Good Times, I ended up taking his part in Raisin and touring it all over Switzerland, Germany, and Paris.
Wow.
And that started my whole career. And while I was a child in this production, I got to watch, rehearsals. I got to watch how music was orchestrated. I got to watch how choreography was put together. I got to watch how the lighting was designed and how the costume design and all of those things came together. And they made a huge impact on me. And as a result, later on, I didn't realize it at the time, but later on I was able to kind of just draw on that experience subconsciously. And I first of all started, even before all of that, I was a musician. I played the piano and trumpet when I was a young child. 6 years old is when I started my music lessons. So I was always musical. Mm-hmm. So when I got to Switzerland and saw this, 65-piece orchestra that was playing all the music for this musical, and I would sit in on all these rehearsals, and we burned an album. We had an album that was put out from this musical, and all this live music and all these great live dancers and singers and actors and all of this stuff in one production really made an impact on me, and I continued
at 9.
Well, at 9.
At that point.
At 9. I mean, I was singing.
Amazing.
I was singing. I had a big solo. In this production, and afterward, when I came back afterwards, I continued. I attended a children's theater every summer at Howard University for like the next 4 or 5 years. There was a guy named Kelsey Colley. He's the person that I really believe kind of discovered me, and will always be indebted to him. He's the one that kind of handpicked me to, go over to Europe and to be a part of this entire, kind of thing that's changed the course of my life, which led me, to either go to architecture school or to the Juilliard School. And the Juilliard School application came back first, and that's where I went to New York. I went to Manhattan. Studied dance, and I also had a great interest in music, but my degree is in dance. But while I was there, I did everything I could in music as well, and sat in on the composers' seminars, and the dancers also were trained in music. Yeah. And I wrote my very, very first formal pieces were written at Juilliard. Some for string quartet, some for solo cello. The rudiments of my first orchestral pieces started there. That's when I began to integrate the computer into my composition, and slowly my compositional abilities were broadened, and several dance companies around the world to this day still use my music.
Do they really?
Yes, and I also was very blessed to be able to choreograph. I'm also a choreographer. I was also, very blessed to make choreography for the Joffrey Ballet and many other companies around the country, as well as for my own company. I had a company when I graduated Juilliard. I came back home to Washington and started a company, and I met my wife there, who was my principal dancer, and we, had 3 beautiful children,
Well, right.
and had that company for about 10 years, and I made over 100 ballets for my own company,
Amazing.
as well as many for other companies as well. In Chicago, the Giordano Jazz Dance Chicago, I made several pieces for, as well as Baltimore Ballet and
Washington Ballet.
Washington Ballet the members have performed my work, as well as Charleston Ballet Theater, among others. I made a piece at the Alvin Ailey School. Philadelphia has done my work in Philadelphia. So for me, the arts are all the same,
Right.
whether it's writing a piece of music, whether it's a piece of choreography, whether it's making a painting, which I'm very passionate about, my visual art.
Right. And your
My
photography.
visual art now is more actually digital. It's more in the computer now.
Right.
So I find all the arts to be very similar. It's like a big circle.
Right.
One flows right into the other. So.
Well, if you have talent, I just saw you have talent in many
Well, I don't know about
aspects.
that. I love
You
what
do.
I do,
Right,
and
right.
I'm grateful that other people resonate with
you
the
do.
work that I
You do.
create. So
You do.
I appreciate that.
And somewhere, though, in that gene pool, tell me, your parents, were they involved in art?
My father actually was. It's funny. I'm half Brazilian. My mom is Brazilian.
Really? Okay.
And my dad was a trumpeter. And so he put the trumpet in my hand when I was very young. So I really,
Wow.
I look back and I can see that he was the one that was really kind of my musical influence, because I know he played in the Air Force. I mean,
Right.
I obviously didn't know that he wasn't there when he was playing in the Air Force, but when he was a younger man, he played in the Air Force, and I guess wanted me to continue that
talent.
tradition of playing the trumpet. So that was my first instrument, along with the piano. And subsequently
experience.
developed an interest in all the percussion instruments. So that's kind of where I believe my musical background
Absolutely.
could have come from my dad, but also my Brazilian side, because
Well, that's
if anybody knows anything about the music of
Right.
Brazil,
It's fast.
it's
It's-
extremely percussive and very rhythmical and very
Absolutely.
dynamic.
Ah,
And so I
phenomenal.
believe if I got anything from
You got
my
from both
I got
sides.
it from both sides.
you got from
yeah.
both sides.
Yeah.
And you really use that. So at 9 years old, you went off to Europe, right?
Yeah, home base was St. Gallen, Switzerland.
Wow.
And from
That's-
Switzerland, we went to different places. We would go to Ludwigshafen or Mannheim in Germany,
Right.
or Liechtenstein, or to Lugano, Lausanne. I mean, it's all over, Bern, Basel, all over.
Right.
But our home base was St. Gallen, Switzerland, and we would always come back there and regroup
Right.
and prepare to go to another city. And then the show went back to the States to take a break.
Right.
We regrouped again and went to Paris and stayed for 1 month solid in Paris, and which was fantastic at the Porte
Wow,
de
what an
Saint-Martin in
experience.
Paris.
But as a child, though, you
And
know,
I met Marcel Marceau when I was a child.
oh my God,
Yeah, the
what
great mime.
phenomenal, the great mime. But as a child, though, you were 9 or 10. So did you have someone to mentor you there, a guardian, or
I had
because you
a,
have that,
I
you
had-
had,
yeah,
you
I
had
did.
the absence of your.
I had,
family,
well,
you
in
know?
Paris, I had my mother.
You did, okay.
But the first chunk of time, the first 4.5 months or so in Switzerland and Germany, I had a chaperone,
Yes.
a friend of my mother's.
Right.
She chaperoned me, so I was grateful to have
So at least
some.
you had that
I did, yeah.
nurturing.
And I was the only
maternal
child
nurture.
in this group of 100 adults. So
Well, that's an experience
I
in
got to
itself.
see a lot of things that most 9-year-olds don't
Right.
really see.
And you grew up very quickly.
I did. I
You grew up-
did.
But what an experience.
I did.
Tony, I've known you all my, I've known you for so many years. I never knew this story.
Yeah.
Wow, what an amazing story. I never had no idea that you were a child actor,
I
a
guess we
singer,
met.
a composer.
But I guess
Right.
we met.
Yes.
I was already doing a lot of photography.
Photography, right. So you
So
took
you
that
probably had
talent
no
in.
reason to know that there was this whole other.
No, I mean, I had no idea. You
I
had
feel like
this
I've lived
amazing-
about 3 or 4 lives already.
Well, you have, but you're so young. And you've transferred all this talent to the next phase of your life, and now you have this incredible photography.
I'm very grateful,
Company
and I owe a
and-
lot of that to my work with Washington Life magazine. I mean, I'm a freelancer. I have my own business now.
Yes,
I run my own company,
Right.
and I employ between 7 and 10 photographers on
Right.
any given calendar month.
Right.
And so the business is growing. Just this week, I'm sending out 3 or 4 different photographers to do different things for me this week. I work with.
So you have your own. Oh, so you can't. Oh, that's great. So you
Yeah, I'm sourcing out work.
Sourcing out
so
work.
it's no longer magazine work. It
Right.
really started off as magazine
Right,
work, and I'm
right.
so grateful.
And we have some.
Yeah, so grateful for
pieces that
that
we can
early
show the
work
audience,
and
yeah.
the work that I continue to do.
The
for them.
covers. I mean, all the
well,
covers
I'm
of
so
Washington
so
Life.
blessed to do the
Right.
wonderful covers and features and fashion editorials for the magazine. But it was that early exposure that
To
I was
art,
given
right.
from the magazine
Right.
and all of the wonderful relationships that I've made as a result
Right.
of working with the magazine that has helped my business to really expand and to grow and to prosper. I was photographing Andre Agassi today,
Right,
the great
right.
tennis player,
Right.
this morning, with another one of my photographers was with me, and then I did 2 portraits today for Washington Life, and now
It's exhausting.
but I love it. It's not work to me.
I know it's not.
It's not
and,
work
and,
at all.
And it shows because
It's not work at all.
you're so professional and you take
Well, I appreciate
such
that.
responsibility, and you know.
Well, I had a
and
big,
you're very
I had a big
detailed.
change. I had a big change, spiritual kind of a change in
Right,
my life.
right.
I had been living a certain way that was
Right.
not really conducive
Right.
to
Right.
success.
Right.
I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
You know, I had young children,
Right.
and
Right.
I wasn't living a healthy lifestyle. I'll just leave it at that. And now, 8 years later, I've with the help of whatever you want to call it, the universe, God,
Right.
something bigger than me, higher power, whatever you want to call it. My life has completely turned around, and in that period
Is
of
that
time,
wonderful? Right.
I've become a strict vegan, and I've now following a Buddhist path of
Fascinating.
of thought,
Right.
and on this path of mastering my mind.
Right. And you've cleansed your mind. And
Well,
you've
through
honed it
meditation,
Through meditation.
through
yes.
prayer, through just self-examination,
Right. Right.
prayer, meditation, and just absolute desire to change, like a willingness to change, and it happened. I asked for the help. I couldn't do it on my own. I asked for this help years ago, and it just came. It was supernatural. It was supernatural.
Right.
I mean, I could not get out of what I was doing without help, and the help came in a profound way, and am so grateful for that. So grateful,
Yeah.
and I feel like I'm just having the best time of my life. Just
Right.
absolutely. I love my kid. I have a new child. I have a young
Right.
daughter that I get to see now, who is now seeing her father,
Right.
who's never seen her father living that unhealthy lifestyle.
Right. So now she's
And
wow.
it's a
what
great
a role
thing.
model.
Yeah,
We're
she's a
gonna-
beautiful kid.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back. We'll talk more about where you are today. And
Absolutely.
fascinating life, Tony. Fascinating.
Thanks.
So we'll be right back.
Okay.
You're watching The Next Word. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
Okay, so what would you bring to my company?
What do you need?
I need problem-solving skills.
I got through high school without a car, a phone, or a computer.
No college degree, though.
Not yet, but life's taught me a lot, and I'm ready for more.
Well, you're not the typical kind of candidate that I hire. But you are exactly what I'm looking for.
Your company could be missing out on the candidates it needs most. Learn how to find a great pool of untapped talent at gradsoflife.org.
Welcome back. You're watching The Next Word. I'm your host, Chris Warnke, and tonight we're having a conversation with Tony Powell, the premier photographer here in Washington, with Washington Life magazine, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary. Washington Life magazine, I mean, everybody has it, everybody's seen it, and you are the premier photographer with them.
Well,
And
it
it's-
wasn't always that way.
No, I
It wasn't
know,
always that way.
always that way.
When I first got to the magazine, there were 2 or 3 other photographers there that were ahead of me.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of early frustration. Like
Right.
I wanted more work. I wanted to work
right,
more.
Right.
But there were these other photographers that had been there long before me, and
there's so many good photographers in the city.
Excellent photographers, and but I'm grateful for that period of time because I got to watch them, I got to learn from them, I got to learn patience because I knew if I just worked very diligently and consistently and with some patience, that someday I would get to that level, and then also have my own company or my own business on the side as well. Right. And I'm grateful for that early time because it taught me a lot of things.
Which is wonderful, though. When you say that patience, I mean,
I had to learn patience because I had just left. Ethic, Well, I had just left having my own 21 person ballet company that I was writing all the music for, making all the choreography, doing all the photography, just doing everything for it.
And directing everybody.
Directing everybody, and we were at the Kennedy Center.
Delegating everybody.
Well, we were at the Kennedy Center several times a year, traveling to other places, touring around with my choreography in New York and other places. And so once I got to Washington Life magazine, I kind of wanted to, work more, work. Right. And so it was a wonderful period of time to learn patience, and I'm so grateful I got to learn from photographers like Kyle Samperton, who was
wonderful,
the godfather, of this kind of society photography.
Very artistically.
Yeah, but but what's so nice about what I do now is I don't just do that anymore. Early on I did lots of society photography. A black tie gala, cocktail party, book parties. Some new ambassador, showing up at some event for the first time, and everyone wanting to throw a party for the new ambassador, whatever it is. Kennedy Center Honors, whatever it is, and I did lots and lots of that, and I still do, but it's grown. It's grown to include editorial work, fashion work, lots of portraits. I mean, I think I've always been a photographer. I didn't just one day start doing this. I mean, all of this kind of has been, even when I was a young student, in high school, I was a photographer, but I was a fine art photographer. I wasn't photographing people so much. I was photographing things that I would put together and, as a way to express myself. So I'm grateful now that I'm able to utilize photography in a more creative way, instead of just kind of like a Ron Galella or Bill Cunningham type of a sartorial, on the street, kind of what are people wearing or who's showing up at this party, which is fantastic. Washington Life magazine is the mainstay. It's considered the most important magazine in this town if you want to know what is going on and where it's happening and who is there. It really is the de facto magazine in Washington for that. So. I'm really grateful for being ingrained and enmeshed in that society environment. Really grateful for that. But at the same time, I'm also very, very grateful for other opportunities to, for portraits and fashion and my business as well.
And you truly are.
I just last week, I was so grateful to have been asked to photograph everything for the African American History and Culture Museum that just opened on the Mall.
Which is amazing structurally.
It's an amazing,
outside, inside.
It's absolutely amazing, and I had 4 photographers for the dedication. We had many celebrities there: Oprah Winfrey and Will Smith and Robert De Niro, and it was just a fantastic event. On and on, and I got to do all that work. So it's nice to do that kind of work as well. And I occasionally shoot for other magazines, but not DC magazines. I've been very, very dedicated and devoted to Washington Life magazine. Especially,
it's a family.
It's absolutely my family. Nancy Bagley and Sarusha Hobby are husband and wife. Nancy's the editor-in-chief. Sarusha's the publisher of the magazine. And they're like family to me. Well, they are family to me. So, I have been and will always be very loyal to Washington Life magazine. But I have worked with other magazines outside of DC, Vogue magazine and Elle magazine and Town and Country, and my work has appeared in many other magazines.
It's all over.
I just did the cover of Forbes Mexico recently.
I saw this. That's right. I saw this. I saw that you just did the cover of Forbes.
So I'm grateful for that. Really
fabulous
grateful for that.
Wow.
Absolutely
grateful. So you've used all those talents. You've been
Well, I like
nurturing all
people. I
these
tell
young-
my children.
Well, you do like people, and you
you
are.
know,
I mean,
don't
and
get
people
into
gravitate to you. Right?
This is a business that if you don't like people, you may not want to be
Well,
in it.
and also celebrities gravitate to you, and you have to have them gravitate to you in order.
Well,
you know,
I mean, I
'cause they have to be
understand
receptive
it.
to
Well, I
have
understand that, you know, that
Yeah.
whole celebrity. I mean, I was a young, kind of a child.
Yes. Star.
I don't know about
You
the
could
word
say it.
star, but I was a young
you
person
were.
that was, you know, on television.
Well, you were talented. I mean, you were.
You know,
yeah.
after that experience as a child,
Right.
when I was over in Switzerland, and Germany, and Paris, I did do commercials
Right.
and TV and some movies here
Right,
locally,
right.
and so I kind of understand what that's like to be on
Right.
TV and to have people want your autograph
And being
to,
photographed constantly. And
yeah, I mean, I have a book at home of easily 50, 60 articles from magazines and newspapers that you know
Wrote about you.
wrote about me, and you know, I show my kids
Right.
sometimes, and they think it's really cool.
Well, thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely,
I mean,
this is a
this is
great
wonderful.
honor.
I mean, because I had no idea. I had no idea. I mean, people, your friends who I won't name, but they've said, you know, Chris, we saw Tony perform in ballets. We saw Tony. So you have quite a following, Tony.
Yeah,
I mean,
I feel really blessed. You know, I am most excited when, you know, I hear that a piece of my choreography is being redone somewhere, or a company is using my music again, and they're bringing back something that utilized my music,
wonderful.
or the choreography, or you know, it's
What's the
so
best
meaningful.
form of flattery is
Yeah, it's really meaningful.
copying, right?
Very
having
meaningful.
having your work done over and over, which is very gratifying.
Yeah.
So now you're taking yourself, of course, you've built your company.
Yeah, Tony Powell Images.
And you're mentoring
Other photographers.
all these photographers
Yeah.
that have come into your life, which is wonderful.
And you know why it's so important? And I'm not going to mention anyone's name, but there was a very, very famous photographer at the Washington Post that never returned my calls.
Really.
And all I wanted was just to talk to this person over the phone. It wouldn't even have mattered if it was. I wanted to meet this person in person for a coffee. I was willing to even talk on the telephone, but this person never took the time to call me back. And that always stuck with me, that I would never do that to somebody else.
That's great.
So I try to make myself
you.
available for other
Good
people.
for you. You should always return calls.
I remember what that felt like,
Yes.
you know, and I never wanted somebody else to feel that same way.
And frankly, you know, photographers in a lot of ways don't get the credit, I mean, that they truly deserve. I mean, they're artists. And, you know, I see the George Thames, you know, I don't remember if you remember from Washington, actually from the Washington Post, and you see some of his photographs in the National Press Club.
There's some great artists here in town.
There's some great artists
really
here.
talented people here.
You know,
We're blessed to live in a town with so many creative, vibrant, dynamic artists. We
almost
really
the
are.
same as New York.
I'd say, you know, a very small
Proportionally?
proportion. Yeah, but you know, but New
Of
Yor's
course,
just
you
much
have
bigger.
so much going on here. I mean,
Yeah, but you know, we're the seat of power here, you know, in this
Right.
country.
So you
know?
attract them.
So we attract. You have to have talent here, even though it is a political town. You know, there needs to be that kind of a talent pool, because there are all
Well,
kinds
yeah,
of things
course.
happening here at
Oh
all
my God,
times. You
all
know?
the time.
Think about all the museums we have, all of the cultural institutions we
Right,
have.
right.
You know, this is one of the greatest theater cities in the I think in the world. You know,
Right,
it's getting better and more theater companies.
oh
and
my God, it's
I'm so
tremendous.
grateful to photograph exclusively for Arena Stage right now.
Right.
You know, for the last 3 or 4 years, I've photographed all of the pre-production for Arena Stage.
Oh, you have?
I have. So when you see the posters
Right.
and, you know, banners and bus posters and things,
Right.
I do that for Arena Stage. And just recently worked with 2 fantastic actresses, Kathleen
Who?
Turner,
Okay.
the very famous
Great
Kathleen
advocate.
Turner, and
Great.
also Marg Helgenberger,
Right.
who was one of my favorite TV actresses when I was growing up.
Right.
So
Wow,
I
what a-
love having that kind of
Right.
an outlet as well,
Right.
to
Which is
be
terrific.
around these wonderful artists that come to Washington that need, you know, to be photographed, and it's just a wonderful life. I had no idea I would have so much
That's
fun.
superb.
It's not even work to me, and I tell my children regularly, if you can find something that you would absolutely do for free,
passionate about it, right,
or
right.
if you could do it for free, you would do it anyway. If
Right,
you could, if you had to do it for free, and you were independently wealthy,
Right.
if you could do it for free, if you can find that thing to do,
That's great.
You would never work a day in your life.
Right.
And that's how
great,
I
Tim.
feel about what I
Yeah.
do. Like every day is a completely different day. One day it's a fashion shoot. The next day it could be portraits with some famous celebrity. The next day it could be designing. I'm also a graphic designer. I could be designing. I'm actually about to start a wedding book that I just shot.
Wow.
One of my best friends got married, and I'm making their huge coffee table
that's
book.
great.
Their
Yeah.
big hard coffee table book that I design. And
Right.
for me, that's extremely creative. You know, how you place images next
Right.
to each other. Graphic design for me is
Right.
just like choreography. It's just
Right.
like writing music. It's placing disparate elements together
Absolutely. Right.
and forming some type of a cohesive whole. Yeah, I feel like I'm a kid in a candy store. I get to
You get to
have
and you get to photograph
lots of fun
and meet all these interesting people and work
And-
with great people
and make a lot of money.
right, and make a lot of money, which is really important. But Nancy, I just want to mention just a shout out for Nancy Bagley because I admire her so much, and she's formed her own foundation.
Nancy
she
Bagley's
runs her
one of the
business.
great.
She's a great advocate for Washington D.C.
Yeah,
in terms
and
of our
social
voter
justice,
rights, and
social justice, human rights.
Right. So I have to say that I really admire Nancy, of course, Sharush, of course, as well. Both of them have been, a terrific couple and have.
Absolutely.
And that's why, frankly, they've really had the magazine for so long.
For so long.
Because they've treated people well, and they've
Absolutely.
treated their clientele well.
Absolutely, and
Because it's hard
there
for
are
a
a lot of
magazine to have
people.
a
There are a lot of
25
people in Washington that owe a lot to Washington Life in
Right.
particular.
Yeah, they
Early
do.
on, being in
They
the
do.
magazine
They
and
do.
offering editorial
Yes,
to
they
new
do.
businesses that open up that are now thriving and flourishing.
Right.
When I look back and I've heard these things and I've actually seen older magazines and realized that it was
Right.
Washington Life magazine early on that gave editorial coverage to some of these restaurants and
Right.
and companies and things like that. So they've done a
and
great
very respectful
service.
of all people. I found.
Absolutely.
That I will
Absolutely.
say that very respectful of that. So
Well, I will tell you this: when I got to the magazine, there were I felt some pockets of some demographics were not necessarily represented in the
right,
magazine.
right. And you've done.
And since
You've done
Nancy
that,
Bagley
right.
has really kind of developed the magazine,
Right.
I mean, she has done so much to include,
Right.
more groups of people in the magazine.
No, she
and
has. I mean,
It's
just-
really
she's
beautiful to
passionate
see.
about social justice, the environment, human
Through her
rights.
ARCA Foundation, absolutely.
Absolutely, through the ARCA Foundation. You're right, for her foundation. right.
Absolutely.
So
So
my hat's off to you. I have to say.
it's nice to work.
With people that are
socially
that are
minded.
sensitive and socially
Absolutely,
minded, and
absolutely.
no, but you are too, Tony. And you're going to have a whole line of proteges that are going to be grateful to you, and they're going to be sitting here one day talking to somebody, and thank that you took the time to
Well,
teach
all we
them.
really have is our time.
Right.
We
Well,
don't
time
have
is
much
everything.
else. I mean,
That's it.
I have
That's it.
time, and I may have some
reputation.
experience.
And reputation.
But I
and
have experience. I may not
Right.
have a bunch of stuff
Right,
to to
Right.
to tell people, except what I've been through and how that could be potentially
Well,
useful to them.
That's huge. That's huge for young people. So this has been great. I wish I could talk. We could talk another hour.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, it's a pleasure
Thank
to be
you.
here.
Thank you.
And thank you for the
Thank
opportunity.
you for being there.
Absolutely.
You're going to go on to even greater, greater things, and continue to do what you do so well. Thank you.
All right.
You've been watching The Next Word. You can see us on Tuesdays at 9 and Wednesdays at 6. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.